Everyone, welcome to tutorial 2 of module 1.1. In this tutorial, we are going to understand about the basics of generative AI and large language models. Now, we'll be understanding about the basics of generative AI and LLM, and then there is a hands-on exercise about practicing the tokenization, what tokenization is, and counting the tokens. So we'll understand that hands-on exercise as well. So when we say types of language model, there is not only large language model, but there is a small language model as well. So what is the difference between large language model and small language model? Large language model is based on generative pre-trained transformer deep learning model. So the LLMs are based on transformer architecture and deep learning algorithm, deep learning model. So we'll understand all of these terms in the upcoming slide. These models are trained on huge data sets. For example, the books, millions and millions of records in the book, article, website, etc. And that's how they learn that knowledge, or that's how they have that knowledge. Whether you ask a physics question, mathematics question, or software testing question, development question, that's how they learn, because they have learned from large data set, the articles, the books that is available in the library, in the book, in the website. And these models can now generate the new content, or based on the query that you ask, they are able to generate the response accordingly. Now these models will handle language nuances, generate the coherent content. What are small language models? Small language model, or SLMs, are the compact models with fewer parameters. Okay, large language models will have massive number of parameters. These are the models, or SLMs are the models with fewer parameters. These are lightweight and faster and are good for focused tasks. For example, mobile chatbots, or you are looking for something which is lightweight and solves a specific purpose. You don't need a heavyweight or large language model for those scenarios. If you are using a model for a specific task, small language model is good enough for that case. Now chatbots is a real good example of having the small language model. You don't need LLMs, because LLMs require a lot of energy requirement, a lot of hardware and software requirement to run those models as well. So in that case, SLMs are helpful. So if we talk about the example, LLMs are like ChatGPT, any GPT model that you see, any model from other companies, for example, Gemini, Claude, all of those are the large language model. Small language model can quickly answer, for example, FAQs or the chatbots. All of those are small language model. How the large language models process and generate content. Okay, so we have understood the difference between large language model and small language model. Now the key details that you need to understand about the large language model are the tokenization, embeddings, and transformer architecture, because LLMs are based on transformer architecture. So tokenization we have understood previously as well. It is about whenever you prompt something, whenever you ask or type in something in the prompt, in the UI, if you are familiar with the generative AI or the ChatGPT, you have the search text box available where you type in your question. So whatever text you are typing in, that doesn't go straight away. It is broken into smaller units, and those units are called as tokens. And these tokens could be, on an average, like 4 characters of a word is one token. It's not necessarily true always. A full word could be one token, but ideally 4 characters of a word is what roughly one token will be all about. So tokens for, say for example, this text AI helps testing could be AI, and the next token could be helps, and third token could be testing. Or testing is broken further into different, say for example, 4 characters in one token, 3 characters in another token. This calculation is specific to the model, so it is not hard and fast how the token calculation will happen, but ideally 4 characters will, you can roughly understand that if you have a 100 character length paragraph, then divide it by 4, those 100 by 4, and that's the average number of tokens roughly that you will get for most of the models. So that's the tokenization, breaking the large piece of text into small tokens, into small set of characters, and that's how the LLMs understand. Then you have the embeddings. Embeddings are the numerical representation of these tokens. So you have a paragraph that has been broken into tokens, and then these tokens tokens are then converted into numerical representation, and this numerical representation, for example, the AI will be numerically stored as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. And I'll show you the actual demo after this tutorial, how the tokens will be calculated and how the embeddings will look like. Okay, so numerical representation of the tokens that encode their semantic, syntactic and contextual relationship. So semantic, syntactic and contextual relationship in a format suitable for processing by the generative AI model. Why? Because based on this numerical representation, for example, AI, there is a word AI, it will be stored in a particular numerical representation. The word helps will be stored in a particular numerical representation, which will have some relation. What if the word is help, then what could come next logically in plain English? So that's how this relationship, semantic, syntactic and contextual relationship is identified, or how the AI model or LLM identifies that. So embeddings will be numerical representation of the token that will encode these details that is suitable for processing by the generative AI model. For example, the words bug and defect would have embeddings that are close together because they are similar, right? So the model know that they are related. So that's how these numerical representation of these tokens help the word, if it is a specific word or a subset of the word, that representation in numerical format is embeddings. What is the transformer architecture? LLMs utilize a neural network architecture similar to how our brains work, like the neurons work, like human beings learn. So same architecture, neural network architecture, is used in the large language models to train these models from the existing data, from the existing text that is being fed to the model. So LLMs utilize this neural network architecture known as the transformer model. This is known as a transformer model. Transformer model excels in language tasks by processing the context of the extensive text, sequences, and learning how tokens relate to each other. So this transformer architecture is important because you have the tokens. Tokens are converted to numerical representation. Any logical correlation of the words will be stored close or nearly to each other. That's the embeddings. And transformer architecture is the architecture that then the model knows in the language processing that if, say for example, this is the word that has been generated, what will be the most closely related word that will go together with the particular word in the next sequence, as per the grammar, as per the logic, as per the syntax and context. Okay, so that's what the transformer architecture is all about. It predicts the next token and generates plausible text that makes a meaningful outcome. Now this outcome might not always be correct. Okay, so this is AI, this is generative AI, and you have to make sure whatever generative AI is providing you as an output, you cross check with your learning, and that's where your learning, your understanding is important. Your knowledge is important to identify whether the outcome or output that these models are providing to you, does it really make sense, or you are just blindly copying and pasting in any of the projects. Okay, so that's why all of this understanding is important, because once you understand these details, you will be pro at the AI and using AI in testing as well. Okay, now the key behaviors of large language models. First thing, non-deterministic output. Why? Because if, say for example, I ask a question, what is software testing, in any of the large language models, say for example ChatGPT or Gemini, I'll get different answers every time. So for example, same input may give different answers due to randomness, because the large language models, they generate the content uniquely every time. So same question, you will get different answer or might get different answer. Exactly same answer you won't get. So non-determinism is the key behavior of large language model. For example, if you say what is AI, you could get different answers every time for the same question. Okay, in the same model you will get different answer. Next thing is context window, another key behavior. Context window we have briefly understood as well previously. So it defines how much text the model can remember. For example, if I say for example I type in a query of 10,000 words, does the model remember all those 10,000 words and is able to process answer, or it will only remember 5,000 words out of those 10,000? So that's the context window, how much the model will be able to remember, and then what has been asked in that context. If it will remember, only then it will be able to provide me correct answer. So that is what context window is all about. If, say for example, it can only remember last 5,000 words, then it is missing the initial 5,000 words of my question that I have typed in. Okay, so this is what context window is. Does it remember? How much does it remember of the question that I am typing in the prompt? Okay, so the larger context window is better coherence in long passages, for example analyzing the test logs, etc. If the context window is very small, then because it's not remembering the context of the question, it won't be able to answer as per the context. It might just answer based on generic understanding. So that's where context window becomes important, but it has also the trade-off that if it is very large, then it uses more tokens, which results in higher computation cost and higher prices. Okay, so that's the context window. Then okay, so that was the last slide of the key behaviors of LLM. Now the next video will be about the hands-on exercise about counting the tokens and how the embeddings will look like. Okay, so tokenization, I'll demo the tokenization and the embeddings in the next video. Okay, so that's all. Thank you. I'll see you in the next tutorial.